of the team, I will record this session so you guys can review afterwards. Please make sure you use this tool. It will be, as anything else, uploaded either tomorrow or sometime during the week. For the review of T1 through T8, I allow you guys to go ahead and, as a free forum, to ask any questions. I'll be asking my own questions, but you could stop me at any time. For example, can anybody tell me what parts have we learned that are inside a computer?
Motherboard, CPU.
RAM,
RAM, yeah.
hard drive,
Expansion slot.
Motherboard.
DIMM modules, the CMOS battery, the BIOS.
Okay. Can you tell me what are some things that may be external to the computer?
Monitor.
Keyboard, USB.
Keyboard,
mouse,
mouse.
Flash drive.
Printer.
Mm-hmm. Any other things that we can think of?
Printer.
external hard drive,
Power adapter.
Mm-hmm. We also learned about different components. One of the components that we learned the intricacies of is a motherboard. Can somebody tell me what is the full function of a motherboard?
Connects.
Go
It's
to
the
the
spot of the components
the other
thing. Let them
components.
communicate
It's
with
the
each other.
spine of the computer.
It allows all the components to talk to each other.
Okay, I think we all in unison kind of said the exact same thing, right? It is the backbone, or it's the one that allows all the actual components to be able to talk to each other. So we also learned that there's different sizes, right? What sizes are out there? What's the biggest size available?
ETX.
ATX,
Okay. What's the next size? What other sizes are available?
Micro ATX.
Micro,
ITX,
ITX, which is a family of form factors.
Mm-hmm.
No, mini, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any?
On mobile.
Correct. And out of the all the boards that are there, the different features, which ones do we know have are due to the smaller of size and or maybe lower, and has both. So it's smaller in size and it has lower power consumption.
The
ITX.
ITX.
Mini ITX.
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 Would a micro ATX be compatible with that sentence?
No, it's just a
No,
smaller
no.
version of an ATX.
What other things do we learn about the motherboard components? What's inside this motherboard that we found out is helpful? We're not gonna go into anything that we need to install. So a CPU, throw it out of the words of the definition or the memory. We're not in any type of question. We're on the motherboard. What other things are here to help me?
Expansion slots.
Graphic card.
So what does expansion slots do for me?
They allow you to connect to peripheral things like cards, expansions, devices.
Okay. Any device or any other extra thing, be an external, uh, another monitor or USB, whatever, sound card. We agree that can be either what are the three, or actually there's four, right? So what are the four different expansion slots available? Anyone?
PCI.
PCIe.
Okay, I heard PCI, PCIe. That's two.
PCIX.
ROM slot,
PCIX. I'm sorry, there was one more that somebody said, I think.
ROM slot,
No, RAM slot would be just a RAM. I'm more in reference to an expansion slot in the back of the computer to be able to add more cards. We're missing only one more port that that's available for me to use, depending on the board, obviously.
Maybe SATA.
SATA would be for a
AGP?
hard drive. Yes,
AGP.
correct. AGP. Thank you.
AGP.
So we have our PCI, which is the oldest one, PCIX, which was the next version of a PCI. Same, looks almost identical. Next version that came out was the AGP. That's the brown guy. And then we have the last one, which is the PCIX. Which one's the fastest?
PCIe.
E.
CIE.
PCIe.
All right. Which ones connect out of those cards to the North Bridge or the South Bridge? Which ones go to the North Bridge and which ones go to the South Bridge? So let's go ahead and tell me which ones go to the North Bridge.
PCIe and
CPE.
PCI is north.
PCIe
To the
and
north.
AGP?
Yeah.
I would have to agree. So which ones go to the South Bridge?
PCI.
PCIx, I guess.
PCIX. So I just said two words, North Bridge and South Bridge. What does that mean? What is a North Bridge?
It's a
So that's
chipset.
the slow.
type
A
type of
chipset.
bus that communicates to the CPU.
It is a chipset. I would have to agree with the first statement. A bus would be like a board or
Oh yeah,
the backbone. So a chipset that does what?
Handles
Communicates to
the
the CPU.
high graphic peripherals
Or just fast
or high,
things.
yeah, fast components.
The fastest components, right? It's an offload for who? Who does he help? Who's he really help here,
The CPU.
right? Since the CPU's got his own stuff to do, they created a North Bridge. Even though there's fast components, we all agree, but then that creates a traffic jam. As we noted, these processors could only process so many bits at a time. Therefore, some of these functions didn't really need to go to the processor at times. It may have to eventually get there, but sometimes it was going to the processor just to go to the South Bridge. So these things are in there to be able to route traffic faster and not compound the actual processor with unnecessary processing power. So what does South Bridge do for me?
Speaks to slower components.
Hard drives.
Next with like the USB ports, the PCI
Connect
slot,
drivers. Hard HDD.
BIOS.
As well.
Who is there anybody that helps this South Bridge?
The North Bridge, right?
That was a good guess, but very close. Wrong direction. I'll give you that much of a hint on the motherboard.
Backside bus.
It's somewhere in the backside of the bus. I would have to agree. I'll tell you this much. He's a superhero. For the inputs and outputs.
Super IO
BIOS.
processor.
Yes,
CPU.
Super IO.
Oh.
Remember your superhero there, he's the guy that deals with those really slow guys. Therefore, even the South Bridge himself is tired of talking to these slow guys. They created the Super IO to deal with those really slow peripherals, for like especially your serial port, who goes 9,600 bits per second. Bits. That's very small compared to that gigahertz processor you got all the way in the front of that Volkswagen. Make sense? Hopefully. Once again, same idea. Alleviate unnecessary traffic, routing information that doesn't need to go somewhere that could just go to wherever it needs to go to without bogging down the processor for unnecessary processing. Only when it needs to, it gets there. Questions, doubts so far? So what else do we find inside a actual motherboard? What else is on the board? What other chipsets or thingies that we find out are on there?
CMOS battery.
CMOS battery. What does that guy do?
Powers the BIOS.
BIOS. And who is this BIOS guy?
BIOS is
Basic input
Basic.
output.
Yeah.
System.
it
Does it only power the BIOS only?
It also powers CMOS,
Well, yeah, it holds the
the settings.
information to the CMOS, so it really doesn't do anything to the BIOS per se. We'd have to agree the BIOS is a ROM chip, right? So there is a CMOS RAM that's holding the information. So what other configuration besides BIOS? What's the other thing? Other type of configuration can it have in there?
Firmware. No.
you
No, there's another type of BIOS is where I'm trying to get to.
UEFI.
Host.
Thank you.
UEFI, yeah.
UEFI. That's the other name of the type of BIOS that we need to be fully aware. So if they say UEFI, I want to make sure you guys understand it is the same but different. We said that the BIOS is the old one, which is completely controlled by a keyboard, no graphical interface fancy where you can use your mouse, versus the new one has that graphical interface. That's the easiest way to spot it. Obviously, the new UEFI has all the new features for security, secure boot, and all the other stuff that the old one doesn't have, including the capability of using a TPM. TPM is a module or a chip that's there for security, which we'll get to in the later chapters. But without a UEFI type of BIOS, it's not useful. Questions? So there was more stuff though. What else is in that motherboard?
Heatsink.
That's a
Connector.
CPU.
Oh,
That's a CPU. So stay on the mother.
Buses.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the
Buses.
bus is the whole thing. I would have to agree the bus, which is all the glowed stuff, but there's little doohickey there that we're forgetting about. Some doohickeys in there, aren't we? We already named the North Bridge, the South Bridge, the Super IO. There's another chip somewhere in there, I think, that's soldered on.
Cache.
I'm sorry.
The heatsink.
And that would be on the CPU. And God, please do not solder the heatsink on. Pásaro, what are you doing? No, just kidding.
Hey, not this time. Not this time. Not yet. Joshua is my true
Joshua is
right
putting
now.
thermal paste inside the thing, and now Michael's going and soldering a fan. No, I'm blaming it all on you.
Oh,
All
we
right,
got
I'll stop
competition,
teasing you
Joshua.
guys. It's the clock, the quartz clock. You guys remember him? He's
Oh,
in there,
yeah.
right? Anything else that you can think of that might be on there, on the motherboard itself?
The PATA and the SATA connectors.
There we go. We got PATA SATA connectors inside. We have the old floppy connectors inside. You have the P1, which I call the Terminator one at one point, but it's P1 we learned. Who's P1? Anybody? P1.
is
It's
that
a
the
main
fan?
power
Oh.
connector.
That is the 20, I believe, times 24 to 28 pin connector. The main connector coming from the power supply unit goes into that spot there. Another thing, so let's see, what else do we have? What else do we learn? Servers may have this. It's a type of an expansion slot, which we failed to mention. Anybody know what it is?
ACC.
That would be memory. I'll give you a hint. It is a type of motherboard, but it's called something else. It is a main board or a type of board. Sorry.
What was the question again?
What other components can we find on a motherboard or in an expansion slot to that motherboard? There is something that servers usually have.
Parity RAM? parity RAM? Or ECC?
That would be RAM. That is correct in reference to RAM. I'm more in looking into the actual motherboard, an expansion card that can be installed on a motherboard.
A riser card?
Thank you. Was Lazaro going? I see him cheering in the background. I think somebody got the answer, but that is correct. The riser card. We need to be fully aware of these components. These are things that we learn. What other type of now inside these expansion slots? We said we got a sound card, we got a video card, we got also network cards, right? There's a plethora of peripherals and or components that if our original motherboard does not have it, or if we require more ports in these slots, we're able to actually install those peripherals. Can I install a sound card on a AGP slot?
No.
No,
Okay. Why can't I install a sound card on an AGP slot?
because it's only for graphics or
That is correct. That port is only for graphics cards. Therefore, if I put that in there, well, first of all, I wouldn't see a AGP sound card, right? But if we tried to put it in there, it would be interesting. So what type of memory, let's get off now into memories. What type of memory are we using nowadays?
DIM, SODIM,
SODIM,
DDR,
DDR4
DRAM.
usually.
or DDR4, 2 and 3.
okay, well, physical format, not the
Oh,
other part.
Yeah.
Just the physical. There's Sims. There was Sims, right? Then there's DIMMs. What's that? What is DIM? Just represent only one type of format of my What does DIM mean to you?
Dual inline memory module.
speed.
Dual inline. It's not the double data rate, which is I want to make sure we understand that it's not DDR. DIM is in reference to the dual inline memory module, and we learned that there is two types of DIMMs. One would be that it has two ranks. It has all of the doohickeys or chips on one side, but it does have the chip broken into two ranks versus the DIMMs, which is the chips are aligned on both sides that you could physically see it. Those are the easy to spot DIMMs. Now for DDRs, we also learned about those. What does DDR mean?
Double data rate.
Double data rate.
Okay. And what does double data rate give me?
it can read or write on both of the up and the down of the clock.
Of the clock cycle. Okay. So what is the usual conversion rate from a PC to a DDR?
8 to
If I'm
1,
going
I think.
Times 2.
if I'm going from PC to DDR, do I multiply or do I divide? And what's the number by?
Multiply.
Multiply by
Multiply
8.
I think
by
it's
2.
8 to
Divide
1.
by 8. From
Divide by
PC to
8.
Okay. Let's who's on the left of this chart that we learned? The clock, right?
Oh.
All right. Now we got the clock. The clock is going at 100, and we learned that DDR does what for us?
Doubles the speed.
Okay. And I just said the word DDR, right? Did I say PC yet? No. Okay. So now we went to DDR. We got 100. We multiplied it by 2. That's just DDR. So now we got 200. Now I want to go to PC. I'm going to multiply by 8.
8.
Okay. So now that we know how I got to PC, if I am at PC, how do I get to DDR?
Divide
by 8.
By 8.
Thank you. Make sense? So be very careful on what letters and combinations that they give you, to be able to come up with the correct formula to go backwards or forwards. So if they give you first DDR, you know, to multiply, but make sure where are you in this little graphic thing. You need to understand also what's the other value that I missed there. I only gave you so far DDR. Is there any other version of DDR?
DDR2,
DDR2.
DDR3, DDR4, DDR5 already.
Well, yeah, but for the test is up to 4. Now, DDR, we said it would be from 100, the clock, it becomes 200. DDR2, what does this number become? I'm still at 100, just so that we can
400.
just, so that's DDR. So then that means PC would be 3200, right? PC2, 3200. Now, DDR3, I'm still at 100. What does this guy become?
30% lower than the other DDRs.
That's the consumption, I believe.
Let's use
Or you
4,
might
so
be
it'll go
alluding to
to
4, sorry. Three goes to which spot? From 100, it goes to what?
800.
800.
800, 8 times. Okay. And then from there, we multiply the 8 by the 4 and by the 8, we get 64, sorry. Now, here's a tricky one. 4, I'm at 100, which obviously is impossible because there's no such thing as 100 for 4, but just play with me, stay at 100. If I'm at 100, what does that DDR4 chip become?
1600.
Everyone agree with him?
400? Oh, no. Yeah.
Do I
1600.
multiply by 16?
It's still
No.
800, I think.
Yeah.
That is
1200.
correct. It's still unfortunately by 8. This is one of the trick questions that's out there. And I want to make sure it's clear to you guys. Unfortunately, DDR3 and 4, Michael alluded to it a little bit earlier, which means that this DDR4 just doesn't have the slow speeds. It has all of the new faster speeds. So DDR3, that generation goes up to a certain speed. And instead of just leaving it with the name DDR3, somebody had to go mess with you. I told you they're gonna mess with you eventually, right? So there you go. DDR4 is where they're gonna go and mess with you. If anybody wants to correct me if I'm wrong, uh, feel free. Give me 1 second, please. Sorry. In reference to our DIM modules that were out there, what's available to us usually now? What's the current pinouts that we will be able to use?
For which one?
DIM modules out of all the DDRs that are out there, what's the current pin numbers that we would probably expect from the DDR?
288.
240.
184.
240,
240 right here, maybe?
184.
184.
288.
204. Not so.
So can somebody tell me how many pins a DDR4 has?
240.
240.
288.
288.
And how
288,
much does
I
a DDR3 have?
240.
240.
Okay. Is there any other ones we think may be out there? Would DDR2 be maybe available still to us, maybe?
Yeah. 2 and 3.
2 might be still available out there. I think so, right? With the i5s. So what's this pin out?
The
240.
same as
68, I think.
DDR3, I
184.
believe. 240.
40, I think.
So far, I've heard 240. What other numbers are available to us?
I said 184.
Okay, I've heard.
Is
But
it
who has 184?
The first DDR.
The SODIM. Yeah.
Okay.
Will we also need to know about the number of pins that appear on the SDRAM? Because I know those numbers are a little different, right?
You mean like the ones for the laptops? Like the SODIMMs and stuff like that? Because the S or the because the S synchronous DRAMs are the that I'm aware of are all the new ones are all synchronous.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's no pins
The
on
old
them?
ones are that I'm aware of. All the old ones are gone, as long as you don't have an old computer. But for the new computers that I'm aware of, they're all synchronous DRAMs. Be that they're DDR chips, but they're synchronous DRAMs. All these acronyms mean different things.
Okay.
So, what else do we learn about RAMs? What does this DDR3 besides that give us? Is there anything else that we could expect on a RAM chip? What else can I find? DDR3 tells me how much I can transmit, right? What other things can I find out about a RAM? DDR tells me how much I can transfer per clock cycle. We agree on that, right? What other things did we learn about that RAM?
64-bit, 32-bit. Sorry, I'm just throwing things out.
Triple channel and dual channel.
That would be yes. We learned that on the motherboard. Thank you for bringing that up. There is motherboards that have several channels, right? You have the regular single channel, dual, tri, and quad. The other thing we learned about a memory was the clock cycles. Clock cycles tell us what?
How fast they can go?
How fast?
Getting close, getting close is how fast what?
Information.
How fast
Data
The
one
rate
maximum it
cycle
transfer.
takes to go through the whole RAM.
yeah.
Somebody just said the answer. If that person can repeat it, please.
The maximum cycle RAM.
That is correct. That number represents the amount of times or cycles that it takes to be able to get through the whole stick of RAM. Clock cycles. So how many times does he have to come around before it finishes from one side to the other, or the total RAM? So those two numbers tell us how quickly or how good the RAM is, correct? Because if I have a DDR CAS1 and I have a DDR3 CAS11, which one would you take?
DDR3
11.
CAS11.
That makes sense to everyone? Why didn't she pick DDR CAS1? Why did she pick DDR3 CAS11? I just said it's only going to take one clock cycle. Why
The
wouldn't she pick?
DDR3s are better
DDR3
than
is
the.
faster than the DDR.
We learned yes, DDR3 goes 8 times faster, right? So we need to take note of those two numbers to be able to determine which is the fastest. At the same time, we'll have to look at the manual itself to identify, is it possible for me to go and install something here? If we're still about to buy everything, this is what we look at. We need to be able to identify what the motherboards we need and the type of memory modules. Questions, doubts? So what's the memories that we found then that are available in a server? We usually found in a server. Let's rephrase that. Not always found because some people are cheap.
The error correction
Buffered
code.
memory.
ECC, error correction code.
Yes.
Another one. What's another type of memory?
Parity.
Parity.
Parity memory. Okay.
And the buffered memory.
Buffered /
Different.
registered memory. Uh-huh. Okay, you guys just gave me names. Now that we know the names, can somebody tell me their definition? So what's registered / buffer memory? What is that?
There's there's a delay, so so information is stored temporarily while it's in transit, so it doesn't get lost if there's a power surge.
Basically, yeah. I mean, you could always think about it. They call it buffer, but we all agree it's just RAM. So all it's doing is, since you only have so much space, you got a 16 gig chip, right? This extra little space is for that traffic jam to flow through there. So everything that's coming in and out is getting buffered through there. Just like when you go and play a video in YouTube, that you see that it starts buffering. It leaves a little trail of about maybe 30 seconds ahead of time, that you see that little thing saying that it's been buffered. It takes maybe 10 seconds, or depending your computer, it could take longer. But that's what in essence it is. It's just holding the information there to alleviate the traffic jam, so it can be a constant flow of information without impacting the performance, in essence. At the same time, to ensure that there is no issues, you have the ECC. So what does my ECC do?
Error correction code. So if one bit gets flipped, it can correct that. If there are 2 bits wrong, it can detect it but not correct it.
Now, parity. Who is parity and what does it do?
It's an extra bit at the end, an extra 1 or 0 that can check if there is an error.
How does it check that is an error?
Counting the ones.
Evening out.
It's got to be even. That's right.
It's got to be even. Okay. And what's the tragic part about even if it's even? What could be the tragic part about this? So I went and I'm looking at a byte of information. This is me, the memory. I went and did, it has to be even. So I went and hit 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, whatever, and I got it to an even number. I let it fly, but then the program crashed. Why did the program crash?
Because there could be 2 errors.
Thank you. Just remember, nothing in this world is perfect. It could be that one of them fails, but the moment that 2 ones disappear, you do agree it becomes an even number. If 1 disappears, it's an odd number. So that the actual uh, parity bit is going to notice. At that point, when you lose 2 bits that coincide with each other, be two of the ones or 2 of the zeros, whatever. As long as it's in pairs, you're going to wind up with a even number. And if you do, you got the wrong information. The only thing that parity does is only let you know that you have an issue so that it can re-request the information. Nothing fancy in reference to that. Any questions so far? So let me see what else can we think of. We've also talked about CPUs, right? Anything else you guys can think of from memory? I'm looking at the presentation here. Can't think of anything else in reference to memory, but if there's no other questions, let's go towards CPUs maybe.
Multi-threading, quad core.
Multi-threading. What does multi-threading mean?
It does 2 tasks at the same time.
It's because I have 2 components.
No, one at
Multi-core
one
has
component
more,
doing 2
right?
tasks.
That is
Asking
correct.
if 2
One
computer or CPU.
that is asking as 2 cores or 2 CPUs. Do you realize when they tried to confuse you once again, a core is a CPU. There is no difference. 2 names, same thing. Then they came up with the quad core, tri-core, how many cores? What does that mean?
There's multiple
Multiple
CPUs.
processors acting as one.
One huge or one processor who physically has internally so many processors. So if it's a quad core processor, it's got 4 processors inside. If it's an 8 core processor, that's what it means. It's one processor with 8 cores inside. One's pretending while the other one's the reality. So what is it that Lázaro hates to put on a CPU?
Thermal
Thermal
paste.
compound.
Mayo.
Good, thank God. No, he likes putting that. What he forgets to put is the thermal paste. Can anybody tell me why? Why would we want to put that thermal paste?
Because of the heat from coming from the CPU to the fan that's attached on top.
But why not just put it metal to metal? If I put it metal to metal,
It's
it'll
gonna
get rid of the
overheat.
heat. Overheat might be one thing, but even if I put it metal to metal and I get a super powerful fan, why wouldn't I want to do that? Get a super powerful fan to pull all the air away from it, and I got it
Because the
touching.
rate of dispersion of the heat would not be the same without that thermal paste.
Exactly. We want to make sure that the rate of cooling and heating is at a certain rate. And that's why they also tell us to have a dollop. And that's also why the majority of the kits already come with the pre amount of thermal paste to ensure that you don't put too much or too little. Just like Goldilocks. Just right. Nobody read the book? Really? Goldilocks? No one? 3 Little Bears? You poor child, I tell you. All right. Next, um, in reference to the CPU, we talked about coolings. What type of coolings are there?
Mineral oil.
Okay.
Liquid.
Which is liquid. Uh-huh. And liquid is the other one. Actually, sorry, there's mineral oil, and then there's the one with the little pipes, right? Of nitrogen. Anything else? Liquid. Is it liquid nitrogen? Is it? Anybody?
There's also air.
Phase change.
I'm sorry?
Air cooling.
Phase change, the liquid to gas.
Anything else?
There's one more I can think of.
It's not the air cooling. We already captured
The
that.
tank of mineral oil that
The
everything.
fan.
Yeah, we had a fan slash heat sink, right? Any other one? I don't think so. I think we named them all.
Did we say the one that's everything is submerged?
Yes, the mineral oil one.
Okay. What's that one called again?
But if it was, isn't it oil?
Yeah, it's mineral oil. It has to
Is
be
it
oil.
called mineral oil or? I think it's called mineral oil.
It's some form of oil.
I could have sworn it's called mineral oil PC, but I could be wrong with that. Somebody look it up in the PowerPoint. I just, what other things did we find out about the CPUs? What are the AMD chips usually called?
PGA.
That's the types, yeah, the PGA ones. But what was the little friendly name that I gave them?
Oh,
FMAM.
All right, FMAM, because I usually start either FM or AM. What's the easiest thing about Intel? How can I tell those?
They start with LG.
They start with LGA.
LGA. What else did we learn about processors?
The
Handled with care.
What's the latest ones that are out there in of the LGAs? What's the latest ones that are out there?
The
1150.
1150.
That's one of them, right? I think so. But is that the only ones that are out there?
Ooh, 1366.
1151.
Mm-hmm.
Like I7.
Any other ones that you guys are aware of? The majority ones that are out there right now, what would be the fastest one from you telling me from those out there?
1150.
2011.
Oh, 20. Oh,
Well, yeah, 2011 is available, right? I would have to agree.
LGA 2066, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But if I gave you all these numbers, even if I invented some weird number on the LGA, would it be easy for me to tell which one is the fastest?
Whichever was largest.
Largest number usually gives it away, right? That we're aware of from what we learn. The higher the number, the more pins it coincides with the pins, which obviously should be in itself a dead giveaway. The hard pain in the butt one was the FMAMs. Why is that? Anybody want to tell me? What's hard
it
about
looks like
that?
they're always changing.
Yeah, forget about the pins, but how can I tell from the name? How would I tell which is the latest and greatest? Just like we did with this, we agreed it's going to be either FM or AM. How can I tell what is the latest and greatest one? What is the fastest one?
By
The
what
number of
DDR
pins it
memory
has.
it works with?
That's a
They might
good
have like a 3
clue,
at the
but the
end, I
naming
guess.
convention, thank you. The naming convention is AM or FM, right? Then they had FM2, AM plus or whatever, the 3, and God only knows what other code they threw at you. So the highest one that we are aware of is the AM3, that if I recall correctly, and 3 plus, because they had 2 plus and 2. Make sense? So those are the things we really need to be able to, because obviously after we have an AM3 chip in our hand, or the 3 plus, we'd look at the speed after that, right? But right away, if we know we have an AM2 board or or just a regular AM, we need to know what we're going to buy and what's the fastest we can buy. Can I fit a LGA 1356 on a PGA socket?
No.
No,
No.
because
Why not?
it
Because the
has
PGA has the
flat,
pins on them.
yeah, flat pins instead of sticking out pins.
Yeah, the pins, what the landing grid array has is that the pins are on the motherboard versus on the PGA, the pins are on the CPU. So what other things does the latest and greatest CPUs allow us to do? There's I'll give you at least 2 more things that they do.
They have integrated memory, like cache memory.
Oh yeah, that's true, right? They have cache. They have a memory controller inside, right? ALUs in there.
Virtualize, allows you to virtualize.
Yeah.
Thank you. Virtualization is capabilities is a must with the latest processors. You have to realize that the old processors cannot handle that. Therefore, we also need to make sure that that the motherboard, we enable it, we learned. Even though the processor may be able to do it, but we need to enable it in the BIOS. What's another thing that they have besides virtualization?
Integrated graphics.
Thank you. Yes, they do. Look at that. You got something out of my brain that I forgot. Definitely has his own little GPU inside. I'll give you that one. Anything else? We learned something. You guys are missing something. I'll give you this much. It's almost like Disney XD. I love doing these things. I'll torture you with it.
Hyper threading?
XD. XD.
Oh.
XD. NX. AMD NX. Intel XD. I'll do it all day. Anyone? No one knows what an
EDB.
Yes, thank you. And what does EDB give me?
Protection from virus or malicious code.
That is correct. Does it remove it? No,
No.
it just stops
No.
it from happening. But the antivirus or anti-malware software would need, you would require that to be able to remove it from the actual hard drive itself. What did we see in the videos when they were installing the CPU? What do we see the guy use for the fan? Was there anything fancy? Was it just, what's the usual?
The X method.
All right, or the next method. What else did he do after that? What did he connect? Did he connect anything, or he just put the fan there and just by osmosis and the heat, it turns on?
He plugged the fan into the motherboard.
Yeah. What's the usual amount of pins on that fan?
4.
4.
Ooh, we got a debate. 3 or 4? 3 or 4? Who agrees with 3 and who agrees with 4?
4 for me.
I say 4.
Anybody agree with 3? Not even my TAs. Well, believe it or not, there is a capability of a motherboard of having 3. Can I install this 4 on a 3?
Yeah.
What does the 4th one do for me, and why is it not so critical?
Controls the speed of the fan or
controls
has
the-
extra
People are
boost.
reading. Thank
speed
you,
of the
Lord
fan.
Jesus Christ. Ain't there people reading today? We're gonna learn today. That is right. That is all it does. Basically, it controls. That's what happens with these fancy motherboards that are out there. They have the capability of seeing and detecting the current heat. Therefore, they're able to speed up or not the actual fan based on that extra little wire. It is not a critical thing. So if you run in that you buy the kit, it's gonna come with 4, but the motherboard has 3. Don't freak out. Just install it the right way. It's only gonna go in one way, right? Just gonna have it hanging because it's got no tooth. But the 3 that were there, you put it on there and that extra one's just hanging on the side. It's not gonna affect it. Question. That's all she wrote for me. Unless if you guys got questions for me. All right. We'll be opening up soon inside Canvas, the actual test. So go ahead and log on to Canvas. We'll be putting you guys into the room. The exam will be available in a minute, and then we will broadcast it in your in the actual rooms when it's available. So just log on to Canvas and look on to the 12th day. Refresh when we ask you, and you should be able to see the test when it's public.
And just remember to